have spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Stuff like you kept saying like shame, like saying that I say all tankies are fascists or what have you, claiming that like I'm spitting on the legacy of the Black Panther Party or of other people who were revolutionary socialists in their time, telling me like shame. You said shame quite a bit, which felt like I was kind of being like scolded by like a school teacher or something. But yeah, I guess I was a little bit confused by your intentionality there. I'd be interested in seeing if we could arrive at an amicable resolution. Also, if I do at any point seem tired or out of it, it is not because I'm disinterested in this conversation. It's because I just suffered critical brain damage following an earlier debate today. But hopefully that will not affect me. I am a strong man, and I will try my best. Okay, that's all I have to say.
All right. Shall I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Vaush, we may not agree on a lot, but one thing I think we can agree on is that Fox News is no good. And you'll notice that whenever they have a Muslim on Fox News, one of the tactics they will use is they'll say to the Muslim guest, they'll say, "Do you denounce Hamas?" And of course, the Muslim guest will say, "I denounce terrorism. I'll oppose that." That's not enough. You must denounce Hamas. When they have an anti-racist activist or an activist against police brutality on Fox News, they'll say, "Do you denounce Black Lives Matter? Do you denounce the radicals and the Black Panthers?" And they'll respond, "Of course we denounce violence. Of course we denounce law breaking." No, that's not good enough. Somebody in the Black movement said something radical. We want you to denounce them. This tactic of demanding that people denounce other people in their movements is a tactic that the right wing has used against progressive forces and consistently uses. And the way it manifests it among socialists and against those who advocate building a socialist society is the demand, sure, you can believe in socialism, but you must denounce as loud as possible every country around the world trying to build socialism. You must repeat State Department propaganda against them. And if you don't do that, you are somehow the equivalent of a Holocaust denier or a Nazi. And that is very, very dangerous. It's a big problem in our movement. Now, Vaush, I know that you and I have very, very different definitions of socialism. I'm not going to change your mind, but I'm going to tell you the definition of socialism that I understand. It comes from Frederick Engels, from his book, which is one of the most important books in the history of Marxism, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, where he says that socialism is when, quote, "the proletariat seizes public power and by means of this transforms the socialized means of production, shipping them from the hands of the bourgeoisie into public property. Socialized production upon a predetermined plan becomes henceforth possible, and anarchy in social production vanishes." And I think that there are societies around the world that have done that have seized the means of production. There have been mass anti-imperialist and socialist working class peasant movements that have risen up, seized control of the means of production. And yes, they've done bad things. Yes, human rights have been violated. Yes, crimes have been committed, and no one is here to defend those bad things. But I think as those of us who want to build socialism in the United States, I think we can learn from those struggles. And I think that portraying tankies as if they are fascists or as if they are the equivalent of white supremacists is a big blunder. And this kind of tanky baiting has been a threat to the entire progressive movement. The war on organized labor began in the 1950s when they pushed some of the most revolutionary labor leaders like Harry Bridges and William Z. Foster out of the labor movement with this anti-Stalinism, this anti-tankyism. And a lot of Trotskyites and social democrats went along with it, and it hurt the entire labor movement. Bernie Sanders' campaign, he was tanky baited because he said that Cuba's healthcare system has been good. 60 Minutes did a hit piece on him. That became the whole focus. Bernie Sanders won't denounce existing socialism loudly enough. This hurts the entire progressive movement. It's not helpful. And I hope that your audience, they may not agree with me about China or the former Soviet Union or that, but I hope that they will understand that trying to divide the movement, painting, people in the movement who are anti-racist and anti-fascist as if they are somehow the equivalent of the far right, which is very dangerous and rising and pushing hate, that I hope people in your audience will rethink that and try to build unity among progressive forces as we struggle against the prison industrial complex, the economic crisis, the rising police state, and try to get to a better world. That's where I'm at, Vaush. Let's talk.
Yeah, okay, so there are a number of points here that I think are maybe a mischaracterization of some of the things that I believe in. First of all, with regards to, so your ultimate argument is one against gatekeeping, effectively, that there's ultimate harm done to the movement when you engage in any action to distinguish the broader, the right-left from the parts of it that you want to excise. Unfortunately, excising undesirables from your movement is, I think you as a fan of the USSR would probably know, basically a necessary part of any revolutionary activity. With regards to the tankies that are referred to, for example, I'm not referring to people who, for example, are at any point not as critical of the USSR as I am, or people who see value in some of the revolutionary movements in the developing world. I think these are perfectly fine things. I'm talking about people who aggressively engage in optics, which are antithetical to the things that I believe in. I'm not denouncing them because Fox News is telling me to. I'm denouncing them because they are my enemy and because they make us look bad. So, for example, while these people are by no means the majority, there are tankies who defend Stalin. Anybody who is in any way, shape, or form in favor of either of the two components of socialism that you laid out, whether that be worker control of the means of production or the destruction of the commodity form, should despise Stalin. He was not a good man. And he did not do good for the movement. He just isn't a good person to hinge public representation on. And I wonder, then, how you would feel about the odds of Bernie Sanders succeeding in the United States of America, not if he refrained from denouncing the healthcare in Cuba or whatever, but if somebody had asked him, do you like Stalin? And Bernie had failed to answer in the negative. My issue here is that I think we're blurring the lines between people who have minor ideological differences but a shared goal and people who do not share a goal with me. Because there are people who defend bad things. When I hear people who are unironically defending, it's off the hands, like the Holdemer denials, like, oh, it was necessary, the kulaks were hoarding grain, there was nothing they could have done, they diverted grain. Like, this is abhorrent to me. Not only because it's morally impermissible, as far as I'm concerned, to defend, the actions which led to a genocide, but also because it's materially wrong, and also because it makes us look really bad. Whether we like it or not, socialism and its development in the United States of America is going to be predicated on our ability to relate to the average person with things we know they care about, whether that stuff be healthcare or ending foreign war or bringing about a reconciliation between those who have wealth divides between them. I don't think we can achieve this by allowing people who adopt the aesthetics, optics, and rhetoric of authoritarians to run rampant within our movement.
All right. May I respond?
Yes, please.
I think you're making a little bit of a mistake. Now, there are two fronts I want to respond on. I can respond regarding myself, and I can respond regarding tankies in general. In regards to myself, I have no interest in defending Stalin's personality and convincing anybody that Stalin was a good guy. I'm interested in defending socialism, not personalities. But you have to admit, the way socialism is presented in the United States, the argument generally is that it's failed everywhere it's ever been tried. It's created nothing but gulags and death and misery. And the response you generally get from socialists is, oh, that's all true, but I'm just so smart that I'll do it better. And that's a ridiculous argument. You look like a fool when you make that argument. You have to be able to deal with the history of the 20th century and point out that everything isn't completely black and white, that mistakes were made, but big achievements were made as well, like defeating the Nazis, like electrifying and industrializing an entire country. And that's the conversation I'm interested in having. I'm not interested in having conversations about Holodomor or the Moscow trials or anything like that. That's regarding me. However, when you characterize people who do question the historical narrative about the Soviet Union in this way, you need to recognize that you're talking about not just guys on the internet who might be obnoxious. Nelson Mandela was a tankie. I will read you what Nelson Mandela said in 1986. Quote, "The Soviet Union is the torchbearer for all the hopes and aspirations. In the Soviet Russia, genuine people have been transformed from genuine people's power, has been transformed from dreams into reality. The land of Soviets is a genuine friend and ally of all peoples fighting against the dark forces of world reaction. That's Nelson Mandela in 1986. So by saying that people that glorify the Soviet Union should be kicked out of your movement, you're disassociating from the African National Congress. Albert Einstein, one of the greatest scientists who ever lived, he gave a speech in 1942 called What Russia Means to Us, where he spoke glowingly about the Soviet Union, how it protected national minorities like Jews. He himself was Jewish, and he saw how important the Soviet Union was in fighting anti-Semitism around the world. He talked about their achievements in science and how the Soviet state made a big point of subsidizing scientific research and development. And Christopher Hitchens denounced Albert Einstein, saying that his greatest flaw was his defense of the Stalinist regime in the Soviet Union. Helen Keller, read her autobiography and the glowing things that she says about Lenin and the Bolsheviks at the same time they were suppressing the anarchists and all of that. To write off people that associate themselves with the USSR and its achievements, or with China, or with Vietnam, or with Cuba, or North Korea. Yes, I said North Korea. You know, the Black Panthers sent delegations to North Korea. The Black Panthers studied Juche ideology. The Black Panthers waved Mao's Little Red Book. You should read Huey Newton's autobiography and see what he said about his time in China and how glowingly he speaks about Mao Zedong. Recognizing the achievements of existing socialism doesn't make you a lunatic, doesn't make you a wingnut. It makes you somebody who is open to understanding what's beyond capitalism. Now, my attitude toward these leaders is that we should study all of them and study both their failures and their achievements and blindly adhere and follow none of them. But as we move toward building socialism in the United States, we need to recognize the socialism here will be unique. We're not going to have Chinese socialism here. We're not going to have Russian socialism here. We're not going to have Venezuelan or Cuban socialism. When we have socialism in the United States, it will be a continuation of the progressive tradition. It will be the ideals of Frederick Douglass and John Brown and the suffragists and the labor movement. It will be that radical, anti-imperialist, anti-racist tradition of struggle in U.S. history taking power. But if you look at that history of struggle, some of the greatest voices
We've
in it
got a lot to go over so far.
Yeah, I was going to say,